Andre calling from Mortgage Scholars, and I'm talking to Sharla Ellis at Chase Manhattan in Utah.
Hello.
And you just finished up Pioneer Day yesterday, right?
That's right, a Utah State holiday.
I've never heard of anything like it. You and I were chatting just before we went on tape here, and I've never heard of such a unique holiday, but you're right, it's an extra day off, right?
That's right.
I don't know too much about you, Sharla. I've interviewed some of your cohorts, Carl Melby and Dennis Duncan. I know you did $98 million either last year or the year before, and I'm curious on how you can produce that kind of volume out in Utah, so we'll get into that. But before we actually bring it up to the present day, everybody likes to know where everybody came from and how they got in the business and what your marketing area is. So why don't we kind of start with the past? Are you from Utah? Did you go to school there?
Yes, in fact, let me take you back to 1980, middle 80s. I got married and came to Salt Lake City. I'm from a small town, an hour and a half away, Logan.
Mm-hmm.
And I was married and came down here and looked for work. I became a receptionist at a company called Chase Manhattan Mortgage and stayed here for 2 years. I was the receptionist and then was moved into the processing department. I was also trying to get my accounting degree, and funds were tight. My husband and I were going to school, and we decided that I would either have to quit school or find another job, and so I left Chase. I kept my degree, kept going to school, and left Chase.
Mm-hmm.
Went to work for some attorneys, and it was wonderful. I learned really what corporate America was all about. I worked for some securities attorneys, some real estate attorneys, and just got my feet wet. They knew a lot of high-profile people. They were our clients. And in the meantime, I finished up my accounting degree in 1990. I graduated, and my manager and I met up at, a function, and he asked what I was doing, and I told him I didn't know what I was going to do. Some of my friends were going to drive the Frito-Lay truck, and your marketing degree, you didn't know what to expect.
Sure.
He said, "Why don't you come back on as a loan officer?" Well, when I was a receptionist and a processor, he always had a cushy job, so I said, "Hey, I'd love to do that." So he brought me back to Chase as a loan officer. At that time, we focused a lot on jumbo mortgages. It just so happened that the clients of the law firm that I had worked with for the past 4 years, many of them being high profile, there's not a lot of high profile people around Utah,
mm-hmm.
They were my clients, and so I had my foot in the door already because I had known them. I kind of knew what corporate America was like, knew who to target, and I did a number of jumbo mortgage loans, and that's all we did. Then we merged with Chemical in 1996 and could do anything, but I primarily focused on the larger loans and really do a number of those loans.
Boy, what a great success story. I like that. I mean, secretary to, $98 million. I mean, that's an incredible success story.
Yeah.
But also, I think, raises something interesting, and that is the business. And I was talking to someone in an interview not too long ago, and we were lamenting the fact that the mortgage business doesn't have a lot of buzz in the college world and people getting out and people that are young looking for jobs. And yet the interesting thing is this is one of the few jobs where really you can make a six-figure income within a couple of years if you're good and more.
Exactly.
And create an annuity income for yourself.
Exactly. I know what you're saying. I've often said it might be who you know that lands you a job, but I think it's what you know and what you do that keeps it.
Well, no question about it.
And so I just jumped on board. Chase knew my work ethic, knew how hard I worked. I owe that a lot to my mother. Just a hard-working, driven person, and that's really what I am. And I'm motivated by the love of the job and satisfying people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. You said love of the job. I just did, and not to, this is the last time I'll quote a previous interview, but just finished doing up an interview today where someone was, a regional manager was interviewing, was talking about how much fun he had on the job. And I remember telling him, I said, in all the interviews I've done, you're the first one that really has talked about the fun aspect. And here we go, within a day, you have the second person.
It is fun.
Well, I think it's important that you like your job. People who do not like their jobs and are miserable really have no business in this one, because it's so intensive in terms of the knowledge you need and the sales skills, and the fact it's a rejection business by the nature of the beast. Even if you're making money and you're miserable, you really have to kind of get out of it.
Right.
Well, let me ask you something. When you started off, obviously you started off with a little bit of a different career path than most people who call exclusively on realtors, but it does beg the question, when you started, did you call on realtors too? Or?
No, I didn't. In fact, I called on my, I don't know what to say. I called on my associations from being in the law firm, and that would be the attorneys that I knew, the clients that we serviced, and it just so happened that that's really where all my business comes from now, is my large client base. I do very little marketing to realtors. I have found over the years that many of them are not loyal, if I can say that.
You can say whatever, you can say anything but a bad word, and even that we can edit out.
You just do a lot of business, it seems, and a great job for someone, and then you never see a deal from them again. And so I just have consistently marketed my own database, and I really started with the attorney relationship I had and the clients that I knew from the law firm. And it soon became, if I did a good job, I was marketing myself. And this is how it works now, is you do a good job, the customer is impressed, and they'll refer. It's just that networking that will come out. So that's really what I've tried to do. And the realtors, of course, are out there. They know me. It's just I don't have to beg for loans from them.
Isn't that
other places?
Isn't that a nice feeling?
Well, it really is, because the purchase market can dry up on you, and I just constantly remain busy.
You were about the second person that I've interviewed that really has created kind of a unique niche. I had a very interesting talk with someone who focused on the stock market, and that was a very interesting conversation, because there are things peculiar to that market with stockbrokers, i.e., they want to get their hands on as much cash as possible, and if you can hit a stockbroker and show them that you will have these no money down loans and you're with a reputable company, boy, they just come jumping to you. So that was a very interesting interview. Yours is interesting because I have never, ever interviewed somebody who parlayed a business, certainly of this magnitude, with lawyers. And I think there's a lot of people out there who are going to be very interested in what you have to say on how you get your business and how you maintain your business. For the simple reason, I don't think that there's going to be loan officers who are going to jump off the ship wholesale and start calling just on lawyers. I don't think that will happen at all. But we do talk about in interviews niche markets and people who, do a realtor base and they do a referral base, but they also have CPAs under their umbrella. And I find this a larger version of that. So I'm going to shut up a minute but ask you if you would discuss some of the ways that you deal with lawyers that might help some listeners out there if they would like to develop some business.
Well, I think with lawyers, I guess my key is I try to come off as knowledgeable as I can. Okay. You fake it until you make it, I guess. So you have to just impress them that you know what you're doing. Early on, I attribute I know what I'm doing because of my accounting degree. I do a lot of high-profile borrowers. Many are self-employed. They have tax returns that are tremendously thick. I love that. I know tax returns inside and out. You throw me in a room with numbers on tax returns, I'm a happy girl. But I know I can analyze sophisticated financial data for executives, self-employed entrepreneurs, trust beneficiaries, all these type people, people with partnerships, S corporations, and so I know what I'm doing there, and I try to present that to the attorneys, the CPAs, those people who might have those kind of clients, the financial planners, that, hey, I do know what I'm doing when I look at a tax return. And I think that impresses them. Also, my performance, I follow through. I mean, if you can always say you know what you're doing, but if you don't show that in what you're doing, then, gosh, you can turn someone off in a minute. And so I understand Chase's credit policy guide. I know how to handle everything, and I think that impresses the sources I go after.
Mm-hmm.
And it even gets me more sources. Hey, Sharla Ellis, she knows what she's doing. She follows through. She comes to the table with what she says she's done, and I just think that first of all impresses them. And attorneys, I've found that impresses a little bit more if you tend to know what you're doing and you're not cocky about it, but you're really sincere and humble. And why I'm successful, it's just, there's no secret. I just am a hard worker. I work many late hours, and I do what I say I'll do. And I just happen to know what I can do. I know Chase's policy enough to know where I can push it. And I have a solid reputation up the line, so when I need something out of the ordinary, or I have a deal that's pushing ratios or exceptions galore on it, I can generally get that through. I have a high pull-through ratio. That's because I've proven myself, and again, I think I know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, ultimately, it's in whether that loan is ever going to go in default, and
Right.
I think that the reality of it is, if you know your product and what you're doing, and you can really look and analyze these self-employed people,
Yeah.
and the fact that the loans stay on the books and perform, next time you make a call and you need a favor, they're not going to jam you.
Right. I like that. I'm fortunate, and I work hard to keep my reputation really a positive one. And gosh, it takes just one thing to knock everything you've done for the last 10 years out the window. But I just try my hardest to do my best and keep my reputation as positive as I can.
Do you take loan apps face to face?
Mostly over the telephone. I am so busy these days, I feel like I am just a telephone operator. I go from one phone call to the next. Also, I try to make it as easy as possible for these borrowers. I will take an old file and complete a new application just with information over the telephone. I have a good memory. I'll remember things about clients that come back to me, and that impresses them. And I do a lot of Federal Express, email, all these things to make it easy for people. I phone their CPAs, and so it's just really a phone call. I rarely meet the people I deal with, and I'll go to closings. I used to do a lot of my closings. There I would cement the relationship, but then I had a baby about 14 months ago, and I was out on maternity leave for a while, and the title company stepped in and did what they normally do.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of been nice to not have to juggle all these closings and drive to them, and so I don't know, I rarely am meeting people that I'm doing business with. We conduct so much of it over the telephone, but I try. I almost bend over backwards to do it so that they feel that it's just been hassle-free. In fact, I say this, my motto is you always be like a duck, calm and unruffled on the surface, and underneath you're paddling like hell. People will never know what goes on behind the scenes, and we just come with a finished product that's wonderful, and they remember that.
Yeah, I think that has to do, another name for that is giving a high service level.
Exactly.
Really. And in fact, there's something in it when you do all these applications over the phone. I'm going to take a little leap of faith here and make an educated guess that one of the reasons that you can pull that off, and not everybody can pull that off, is the fact that you're getting referrals from attorneys
Right.
And it's the attorney also that's kind of blessing it. You know, give Sharla a call. They're looking at the attorney, you know, like you look at a doctor and say, well, geez, you know, if lawyer Tommy Williams says she's good, she must be good.
Right. And so it's already done. In fact, I'm already made mention I have a very high pull-through rate, and I like that. It's very rare that I don't take a loan. It's very rare that I take a loan and have it fall out. I mean, the people that generally come to me, they're committed to me. I stay in touch with them all the time, and I take it personally when there's a problem and a customer goes elsewhere, and it's rare that that happens. I just will say, what did I do wrong? What happened?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not often. Once I get an application, it's usually there, and you know, we're.
I think there's another byproduct that I find a little bit interesting, because remember, I've got about 25 years plus experience in the business myself, and did what you did for a long time, and that is, you know, there's a lot of credibility that gets built up here. You not only have the attorneys, you have the accounting background, you can talk the language, you know, it all kind of, you know, the programs and everything. And I just, by extension, like to take that out to our listeners out there. I don't find this any different than whether you're dealing with builders and realtors. I think, you know, high concepts, a high service level, know your product, you know, the things you're saying today, you know, return your calls,
Exactly.
be concerned. You said you work hard and long hours.
Yep.
You know, build that. This is a relationship business. You have relationships with attorneys. I'm not sure there's a nickel's worth of difference between what you're doing and what loan officers should be doing, whether they're dealing with realtors or builders.
Right. Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, and I think it's easy for me to say because I do have the referrals trickling in, and people in my office though have gone through a very dry spell this year. And I've tried to share with them what some of my secrets might be, but they still are experiencing those dry spells. And so I'm not quite sure what it is, but those are some things that work for me.
Well, I think that, you know, when we talked a little bit earlier at the beginning of this, we talked about the fact that this can become an annuity business. And if you think about it, there are very few jobs out there or professions that can create an annuity income stream like this one can. Even insurance business, which can do it, obviously, if you own your own book, you know, sometimes that takes 8 to 10 years before you've built up any head of steam.
I'm laughing because I have used those words, and I want to go on record saying the income is not my motivation. I really, that's third or fourth down the list, and that's certainly a benefit of doing the type business that I do, but I'm not motivated by that. But every now and again I'll get one of my wonderful clients calling back, and, you know, I'll say, he's my annuity. So I have said that before, but they trust me. They know I'll handle it. They know I'll get the job done. They don't think of going elsewhere. For all those reasons you pointed out, you know, I do what I say I'll do. I'm known as somebody who gets things done. I'm not afraid of a challenge. And I really cut my teeth on the self-employed and the tough underwrite.
You said something earlier. I want to kind of go back to it. You said that money was really third or fourth down on your list. I find that interesting, not because it's not number one, but I do find it's interesting that it could be number 4. And that, of course, begs the question of what are your priorities as a professional? Because you got 3 others on top there. I want to hear about them.
Well, goodness, now I have to think about that.
Well, family and friends probably. You know.
Well, and you sacrifice something, sacrifices when you're this successful. And I mean, my precious little boy that's 14 months old, I love him. And I wish I could spend all the time in the world. But I did this to myself. I built up this big empire. And you know, for years and years I had no children, and this was my baby. And so I wish I could cut back a little bit to spend time with him, but family has become a little more important to me since I had him, and
Sure.
I have a wonderfully supportive husband who, by the way, is a contractor, so we talk shop. I've learned a lot from him as to the inside of, builders and those kinds of things. But family, I guess coming into work, I love what I do. You spend a lot of time here, and that, the reason I do this business is I love it. It's rewarding to me. And I like the relationships that I built. I like the reputation I've built. I like seeing my name on top. That's a big motivation factor for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pull out the leader report and see
Good.
my name up there, and that just makes me want to do more.
I'm going to tell Dennis on you when we get off.
I know.
That you're after him.
Yeah, Dennis and he said, if I only could do the loan size that you do. And I say, if I could do as many units as you.
Right. Well, he's doing, I told you, he sent me an email. He's doing this Dennis Duncan. And Dennis is closing 61 units this month. He just sent me an email that says he's on track to do 70. So you're right, if you could, since he works in near a small town in Roanoke, I think it's Blacksburg, but the average loan amount there, I'm afraid to ask what that is. And if we could take it out to, what some of these other people do, and probably...
My average loan size is about $400,000, $360,000 to $400,000.
Well, that's
Dennis
fabulous.
and I shared the spotlight in 1997. I was first in the nation in volume. He was first in the nation in units.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fun to get to know him better and his strategy. And he does have a lot of technology under his belt. I don't. I'm average when it comes to technology. I probably could be better if I used it more. But I don't.
But you know what? You have to get back to what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think one of the big mistakes that loan officers make out there in the business world is that they try and copy somebody in toto and do everything that they do instead of just taking what works.
Right.
And if that doesn't work for you and you're happy and you're doing the volume and you have the success, well, who cares,
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you say you got a good memory anyway. Let me ask you something. I find something else interesting. I read a little deeper into this as an analyst, and that is, I suspect, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, that when you create, I'm going somewhere with this as a lesson to the people out there listening to this, and that is that when you capture a particular group, like lawyers, and you have credibility and you have a good background, you do all these things, I'm going to take a guess and say that pricing does not become as paramount as when you're dealing with a realtor community and you're out there every day and, what's your rate, and
right.
They'll cut your head off for an eighth of a point.
Exactly. You're exactly right. I have never sold price. I have sold many other things beside it. And what I like to do is I like to get as much information as I can about the borrower from them or the source bringing them in, structure a program that meets their needs, and I feel if I can do that, then the price is secondary. I am not queen of overage, really. I
Mm-hmm.
don't get a ton of overage like many people can boast. I think that's because the compensation is not first on my list, but I don't take a lot of underage either. And so if that's the case and I can meet someone's objectives and I am good at what I do, I feel that I'm worth the price.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's not a lot of dickering back and forth on price. It's just agreed upon, and your rate is what it is, and you've got a pro working for you, and I think all that is sensed, and I come away with something that's a win-win for both of us.
Yeah, and it is a win-win for both of you. As you know, people in our business know that people who jump ship and go to some place for an eighth or a quarter of a point, they end up screwing themselves because either they're dealing, not always, but in many cases, dealing with someone that's not as reputable or knowledgeable.
And I see that. It thrills me to be able to pick up the pieces of someone who has gone to numerous places, and then they'll find us or they'll come back to us, and we shine. So I know what we can do, and I just run with it as soon as I have an application or I'm picking up the pieces, and that's where I shine.
Let me ask you something. If someone wanted to, and I'll throw the first little bite out, if someone wanted to do what you're doing, and not at the level that you're doing, as an ancillary income stream, much as someone would go after a stockbroker or CPA, what would you recommend that they do? And that's for loan officers out there that would, like to maybe pick up some business in their cities or wherever they're living with attorneys. And the first thing I'd throw out is, obviously, you have an accounting background. Doesn't mean they have to, but it certainly means they need to take a class and know how to read a balance sheet.
Exactly. I mean, even if they're not going to stay with the self-employed borrower, I just think that background of knowing where income can come from, W-2s, pay stubs, Schedule C business, just some general knowledge about that, because with tax returns, too, you can get a working knowledge, and you do not need the degree behind it. But just to know the why behind the what, I think is critical. I think it's important to understand a little bit about mortgage lending. I really regret these newcomers. In Utah, there has not been a lot of regulation until recently, and anybody and everyone was hanging up a shingle that said, I'm a mortgage broker, and yet they didn't know how it was done, and they just did not bring a lot of integrity into the business. And so I would just say, learn how the business is done, and again, you'll have a working knowledge of that the more you get into it, but just a basic knowledge. Read a book on it, ask someone, be an apprentice for a month or two, and you can learn the business. But I'd also say, as you start doing it, honesty and integrity, I believe, are number one. I mean, you just need to do what you say you are going to do, and perform as if your career depends on it, because it does. And I just feel that if someone is honest, and if someone does that, then they can succeed really in any business.
Yeah, all you have, when you get down to it, in this business, all you have is your reputation.
Yep.
And if you lose your reputation, certainly there are listeners out there know many people what it's like to lose an office because you either gave an answer where you really shouldn't, you gave the wrong answer because you want to take the time to find out, or whatever you did. We've all lost deals and lost offices. And it's a pretty hard lesson.
Well, and I don't think anybody expects everyone to know things at all times, and they're expecting that you might say, hey, I'll get back with you on that. Let me check it out. I'll get back with you on that. But if you say you're going to get back with them on that, then do it.
Right.
So.
And do it. I had someone I was talking to who said, not only do it, but give them a time you're going to do it, and then call them earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
If you say you can get back at 6, we'll get back at 5.
Right. Along that reputation, I think being the best is, all this is pretty Pollyanna, isn't it? But if you are the best, hey, reputation is the most effective advertising. That's what's worked for me. I went for years and years without marketing. I'm currently marketing. When I came back from maternity leave, I decided to send out a quarterly newsletter and just a mortgage market in review. I subscribe to that through RateLink and send that out every 2 weeks to a group of realtors, 100 realtors, or in that same group there's realtors, doctors, attorneys, financial planners, all my close sources. And I send that, and that keeps my name in their face. But before that, I did not even have time. When you do 98 million, you don't have time to do any marketing. But you are marketing for yourself by doing a good job, and that's what I had to keep in the back of my mind. Because if we just always do a loan that's flawless or hassle-free and a customer's happy, hey, they're going to tell their friends.
Right. Let me ask you something. Switch tracks just a little bit, and I strongly suspect that you have a pretty strong dependence on your infrastructure that you've set up internally in your office. And while we're not looking to learn anything proprietary to your company, I would like to know how you've set up your office to process this volume, and not just the volume, but the complexity of the deals that are coming through.
Right. It's called Me, Myself, and I.
Okay.
I have really been unfortunate in that I haven't had the greatest backup team, and boy, the processor, I have had one processor that's dedicated to me, and she just works her little fanny off, but the mental capacity of what we do, I think, is beyond her level of understanding, and so it's brought a lot of that processing back on me. And I have asked for additional help, and we just haven't had the means to do it, or someone hasn't seen it's been useful to do, and so that's where I've come into the picture, and you just have to work smarter instead of harder. There are days when I'd work from 8 in the morning until 10 at night, and Barbara would be doing what she could do, but I'd be here late just getting files out the door, and you just wear all sorts of hats. You wear a copier hat, you wear a phone answering hat, you wear the processing hat, anything you can do to get these deals through.
Mm-hmm. I got a couple of people that Linda Tippy comes to mind at SunTrust, and Don Ehrman at SunTrust too, and he does about 600 units, and I forget, Linda's not too far behind, and they do pretty much everything themselves.
You know what, I wonder if I'm doing this much in this structure that we have, how much more could I do if I did have the support staff, but Chase has decided that they like it this way, and so no matter what I say, it can't be changed, so you just live within it and make it work.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is in their behalf, it is a profit business, and when you have bricks and mortar out there, and not everybody does the volume you do, there is at the end of the month, a net profit, an NOI.
And I think really my biggest fault is I'm more a coper than a complainer. And so, hey, it's this way, I'm just going to make it work. I'm just going to dig right in, keep my nose to the filing system. I will say, though, that the office has been restructured within the last 30 days, and a new processor that has come on board is from an underwriting background, and she is going to be my assigned processor. And so I'm kind of excited to be able to share some of the responsibilities of getting files together to go into underwriting. And I don't have the luxury of all of my loans fitting in the automated underwriting system. A lot of them get referred because they are so complex. But I'm pleased that I now have someone who can be more a partner in knowing and understanding beyond just the what. But, in all fairness, I have had a great assistant, and she's just worked her little fanny off and couldn't have done what I've done without her. But there's a lot of effort on my part, too, to stay late and get it done, and weekends and all those things.
Let me be a bit of a devil's advocate and ask you here, because I'm sure there's a lot of heads wagging outside listening to this saying, well, why doesn't she just spend $25,000-$30,000 and get an assistant to do some of the, and pay yourself like a lot of loan officers do at your level, to do some of the more mundane things like keeping databases and creating them and, doing some of those things to make your life a little bit easier.
Right, and I guess when I said me, myself, and I misled you a little bit, that I set up a database after I came back from maternity leave and started marketing. I told you years before that I hadn't, and my sister did that. I paid her to do that, and I send out now these quarterly newsletters from the database that she has compiled, and it's been wonderful to have done that. And so I've wanted to, but that's something Chase Manhattan doesn't allow, is someone for me to pay directly.
Oh, I see. So that's more of a company policy.
Believe me, I've wanted to. And I've utilized her where I could on things that she could do outside of the office. She used to pay our bills here, and is now on a temporary contract. And so as a temporary, she'll fold my newsletters, and so I do have that, but it's spotty and sketchy, and we still do a lot of work, but I'm with those other people who do a lot of work themselves. I wish I had, 5 or 6 assistants. I could put them all to work.
Right, immediately.
Yeah.
Well, this actually leads into another topic that I'm particularly interested in, and our listeners too, and that is, with all that we've heard before, how do you manage your time? I would think that you have to have some structure to your life to be able to do all this, including your family and everything.
Right. I have a day planner, and I use it extensively to keep my hours together. I return every call before the sun goes down, our sunset policy, and I slip on occasion if I have had, 25 phone calls at the end of the day, but I will return calls as quickly as I can. I generally underwrite the files and put them together after business hours, because during business hours I'm on the telephone and I know how late Federal Express leaves and what's the latest Dropbox, and so I organize my day and how can I get things done, and there's a Dropbox in the building to send packages out, but if I miss it, hey, I can slip by the airport on my way home and drop the last package in. But again, if I promise something to someone, I will deliver it. If their loan is to be approved, I will stay late to do it. And I don't know that that's the best thing. My family suffers. I can't ever tell to the hour when I'll be home, but they know it will be late. And in the morning, I get in now about 9 o'clock. I like to spend some time with my little boy. I've said weekends are mine now since I have him, and we spend weekends as a family.
I see.
And I like that, but...
well, that's another byproduct, I would think, too, of not having a realtor base. Realtors feel free to call you at 12 at night, and you better feel free to take the call,
Right.
With your business, I would think that, especially in the lawyer profession, that things are a little more genteel and, business hours and a little more controllable.
I like voicemail. I can call and respond without getting into the little chit-chat of the day and, how are you doing? Well, how was your weekend? I just get down to business on voicemail. So just the ways of working smarter, not harder. You come in the office, you just get busy. You don't chit-chat a lot with the office.
Sure.
So there are things I do to just make the most of my day, and I'm on a fast pace all the time.
Do you use a mobile phone at all, or do you keep that private and use your voicemail pager?
No, my phone bill's quite expensive.
Can your clients reach you by mobile phone?
Absolutely.
Oh, they can. Oh, I'm a little surprised. A lot of people out there try to avoid that and use the voicemail pager and then use their, mobile.
I have a really inexpensive system. I just found if I had a pager, I carry my cell phone on a belt clip on my skirt, on my waist, and I have found that that's been great because I carry it with me all the time, and if I'm in a meeting, I'll turn it off, but the phone rings and I can catch it and people can chat with me, and I guess it's just my preference as to a pager.
Well, you certainly can give a much higher service level. There's a big difference between accepting somebody's call as it comes in and calling them back 4 hours later. Not that there are not times when you need and have to do that, of course.
Yep. So yes, a cell phone extends my day. I can call in the car when I'm driving to and from. So.
Do you spend a lot of time in the car?
No, I don't. I drive to and from work, and that's about it. I don't go on a lot of sales calls either. I just find that it's probably because I've built up such a database over the years, client base over the years, that I just am here answering calls.
I have to ask you, but it's been in the back of my mind here since the very first time of the interview. Can you tell me a little bit about your market area? I think most of us, when they think of Utah, I think of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and beyond that, I'm kind of an idiot. And but I wondered if you would describe your market area, because your loan amount is so high. It sounds like you're in a relatively
I think I catch a lot of the volume here. I'm probably one of the busiest loan officers in the whole area. I think I do more volume than any loan officer in the Salt Lake City area, but I don't know. I guess I should know my market a little bit more. Don't quote me on this, but I think Salt Lake City has just over 1 million people, and then of course there's along the Wasatch Front, which includes little bedroom communities. There's Park City, as you've heard. We're hosting the 2002 Olympics.
Oh yeah, sure.
I have a lot of second home buyers up there, and a lot of people who live there, and those values are strong. Or 1 million plus homes, and some homes up there are a handful, or 3 and 4 and 5 million. And I have done a lot of second homes in Park City. But then I found Park City had a lot of brokers, and it's just a little more tough area to compete in. Everybody wants a piece of that pie, so I've stayed a lot into just the Salt Lake area, the East Benches, and there's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of old family money, and there's just a lot of people that, professors, physicians at the University of Utah.
Isn't there a high-tech movement underway in Utah?
There is.
Very clean industries.
Clean industry, good work ethic, and so the East Benches where the homes are big and beautiful, I do a lot of financing there, and my parents, I did a $25,000 loan for them, so don't think I haven't done small loans, but I guess it's just my initial...
I hope you whacked them a lot of overage for that.
Actually, my mother complained about the interest rates. She says, I thought this was a free loan.
Yeah,
said,
right.
Mother, there are no costs. What did you think? So I don't know that I managed their expectations very well, but that's one thing I try to do. I manage expectations of my clients. But no, I really think I just have a large portion of the high-end homes, and there are a number here. It's a beautiful area, a large city. We have our own basketball team, as you know.
Sure.
Many of those players are my clients. So, it's fun to do some local celebrities and even national celebrities that come and buy second homes up in Park City. So that's quite fun. I also have a number of clients who buy second homes elsewhere, and if we can loan in those states, then I'll do that for them. But there are several states that are, of course, no if you don't have an office there, and others you can do loans there.
Sure.
The right relationship is everything, as Chase says, so we'll try to accommodate where we can.
Yeah, I think it does, and I think we're going to end on that high point, but I agree. I think when all is said and done, at the end of the day, it's developing relationships.
Right.
And I think all the things that you've talked about, really, without exception, even though you're in a niche that's foreign to everybody that's listening out there, everything that you've said applies to the other ends of the business.
Good.
Don't you agree?
I do.
And I like your emphasis. I'm going to tell you publicly too. I like your emphasis on integrity. There is a movement underway within the industry to clean it up a little bit with some of the bad apples that are doing these crazy 18% loans and 10 points and whatever. And I think ethics should be a fundamental part of loan officers training, and I know I was fortunate enough when I went to school. I took not only logic classes, I took ethics classes. I was very well grounded in the classics, and in that sense, I was lucky and went to an English Benedictine monastery for high school that had 5 or 6 people in it, and you get a strong grounding in values, and but whether it's in school or whether you get it from your family. I think ethics should play a major part in your business.
Oh, I agree. Then you can hold your head up at the end of the day.
Right, exactly. I think that's a good way to end it. And Sharla, I want to thank you so much. This has been certainly one of the most pleasant and easygoing and enjoyable interviews that I've ever done, and I wanted to thank you for that. And I'm sure listeners out there are going to take a lot of your points to heed. Anyway, thank you so much, Sharla. We'll keep in touch.
You bet.